Good morning. I'm Chuck Dick with CalArb's Programming Committee. And this morning, as the next in our series of California Conversations, I have the real privilege of interviewing not only one of the really most important people in international commercial arbitration here in the United States and as well in California, but also a longtime friend and most particularly a fellow bow tie wearer. And Steve Anderson with the AAA and ICDR. We're delighted to have you with us and joining us in this series of interviews to introduce yourself and your organization a little bit better to the audience of members in CalArb and the larger audience writ large. So you and I known each other for, I'm going to say, going on 3 decades. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your backstory, and how you got involved in this business in the first place.
You bet. First of all, I want to thank you, Chuck, for taking some time with me today, and it is a treat to be with you. I want to thank CalArb for the opportunity to have a chat and discussion, and so thanks there needs to be recognized, and it's important. So just the background a little bit for me. I started my undergraduate at the University of Utah, had courses on mediation, arbitration, negotiation, and a variety of others. And once I got a hold of this topic called mediation, it just I couldn't let it go. And I drove around town knocking on mediators' doors back in the day, and it was a tough road. I was trying to find opportunities, and lo and behold, a position at the American Arbitration Association in Salt Lake City opened up in September of that year, and I applied and was able to get the job. And since then, it's been a long career of just so many different opportunities and community. And you and I began to get to know each other in San Diego in 2007 when I moved down to attend. 1997 through 2007, I was there, and went to law school at University of San Diego, and took some courses at Pepperdine as well. And so that's kind of the background of why I'm in this. And it's been, I guess, some of the most enjoyable parts for me is really community, right? It's the people. And that's what drives me in my kind of, whatever I do, it's what are the people behind this, and how does it increase collaboration? How does it increase resolution and those sorts of things? So that's the drive and I guess the passion for me in this. So,
well, Steve, I know this has been a remarkably fulfilling career for you with AAA and now more recently with ICDR. But what have been the big rewards that have made this such a satisfying piece of work?
Yeah, I think if I'm thinking of rewards, it's successes along the way that for me are really about seeing a growth in acceptance of international arbitration and mediation services. It's working with communities, and that might be industry based, it might be location based, in finding ways to increase visibility and awareness. But it's also kind of getting communities and individuals and even companies or law firms in a more understanding place or a better place for increased and improved dispute resolution. So those are all the nuances of what I've tried to do and what I've really enjoyed and along the way. So
I must say, I don't know anybody in California, perhaps even the United States, who's in a better position to know what have been the big developments in arbitration generally, and particularly international commercial arbitration in the past several years. But I'd welcome your comments and observations on that subject.
Yeah, I think just in terms of developments and activities in this area, we've seen lots of growth in the international arbitration and area. I think there's been an evolution of progress, I think, in this area as well that's been fascinating to watch. If we look at rule development process and advocacy styles with international arbitration, and even the give and take of what I would say dispute resolution domestically and internationally has been fascinating to watch. And so I think of efficiencies that international offers in terms of some document exchange practices and hearing processes that I think, if I look back at our beginning days, I remember sitting at my desk in Salt Lake, and an arbitrator came into me and said, Steve, I haven't taken a pro bono case in a while. Can you line me up for one of those? And that doesn't happen today very often. And the idea of efficiency and economy in the spirit of this is still there, but there are I guess I would say we have to work hard to keep the integrity of that. And I think about document exchange and efficiencies there on the international front I think are really important to that, right? And we have to keep an integrity, or at least a watchful eye, and we can't be passive about it. So those are a few of the nuances. I don't know if that answers your question in sufficiency or not, or.
Well, let me follow up on that precise point. I mean, everybody knows that discovery continues to be a key part of civil litigation in the United States, and more as traditional litigators end up finding their way in arbitration, they bring with them, some might say, some bad habits, including an insistence on continuing to conduct the same kind of discovery that they are accustomed to in the state courts. And I wonder whether you could just amplify a little bit on your last expression of some concerns and the need for us to be looking at efficiencies and how are we going to deal with this?
Yeah, I think, and you're right, Chuck. I can't always, I get, I guess as I observe practices in the international realm, both I hear about with us and others, there is this, I guess, acceptance or integration of U.S. style discovery, and the international front, that phraseology or verbiage of depositions and discovery is actually can be offensive to a large share of practitioners in other jurisdictions, and so we can't presuppose or supplant U.S. style practices as the high mark or the benchmark for what they should be, and to those ends. We created document exchange guidelines back in, I think, 2008 that basically said something along the lines of U.S. style discovery or other practices, interrogatories, depositions, are not appropriate for our rules. And we integrated those as rules in 2014, and they are there now. And so as a unique institutional rule, we really want to say the benchmark is to exclude those practices. Now, it doesn't, arbitrators like you and others in the community can hear parties advocate for a need for maybe a circumstance like that, and they have the authority to do that. But that's or parties can agree, I guess. Otherwise, we're not taking away party agreement by that, but we're just creating what I would call a benchmark of efficiency. And I think that really helps, especially if you're an advocate of a civil law country who's never had to deal with that sort of process. No idea, right? What does this look like, right? Even our friends from Canada, discoveries versus depositions, and the differences there are should be noted, right? And so we need to be, I think, aware of that process-wise, fairness-wise, and also culturally in a process. So.
Well, you raise another question in my mind, and I don't know whether it's just because of where I live and work, or maybe peculiar to my personal experiences, but I've seen a lot of quote international arbitration matters that really are classified as that just because one of the parties happens to reside outside the United States. And in fact, they're operating off of agreements that oftentimes ensure a full range of discovery, perhaps assuring that the federal rules of civil procedure will apply, and strange language like that. And I wonder, as you see the growth of international commercial arbitration in the United States, is that part of what's explaining this insistence on widespread civil discovery techniques, or is there more to it than that?
I think there's probably 2 points to that to, I guess, analyze. One is, corporate counsel or attorneys making, the corporate deals, whether that's, a lawyer at a law firm or corporate counsel or both, sometimes don't analyze whether this case is international or not. And it behooves them to do that. I mean, you look at the enforcement power of the New York Convention. I think around 170 countries have signed on to that. And so that power actually is absolutely amazing for risk management and company, solvents, all those things that come in disputes and viability. So they need that. The question that if I meet with corporate counsel is this at all international? And that definition could include, maybe the subject, it could be 2 U.S. companies building something in Mexico. It could be one U.S. company and, somewhere from, Mexico or any other country. It could be, there might be a parent company that is really the money behind this with a U.S. subsidiary. And so those are all the nuances, the complexities of that. And then just kind of going back to understanding that, again, corporate counsel need to kind of have at least a better understanding of the New York Convention and the presumptions of international arbitration. I don't call dispute resolution ADR internationally. That stopped once I got this position with international. I don't say ADR because it's really not the alternative. It's the presumption. So that's a big difference. And I think getting education and messaging out there so people can know that and take advantage of this process is key, right?
You mentioned a few minutes ago changes in the rules at AAA, and I know that you've been really deeply involved in the association's efforts to modernize and to upgrade the applicable rules. How do you go about doing that? Can you share a little bit of that experience with us?
Yeah, I can. That's probably been one of the rewards that I've had over the years is projects like that. And so just as an example, the last couple of rule revisions for the ICDR, we have instigated external committees with representatives from individuals really around the world, and they're ready, and we enlist them in active participation to review our rules. And that process includes analyzing the current rules. We don't need to change rules just to change them. We want to be innovative, right? We also really want to protect the integrity of the system. And that includes efficiency and economies. I'll tell you a quick story that I think is really indicative of the changes in the rules in the past few years. Is I was at a conference in Miami years back, and there was a group of attorneys from Mexico, and this was pre-2014, our last rules, and they had our rules and they were reading them, but back then there wasn't process description. It was as simple and as it could be. The ICDR will appoint an arbitrator, a little more than that, but not much more, right? So they didn't understand how that worked. And so we've really added what I would call a picture of process into the rules. So advocates at whatever level can read them and, okay, this is what should be happening now. and this is how I can participate. So those are some of the nuances that go into this. We've been really fortunate to create, we pioneered the emergency arbitrator rule mechanism 2006. We're ahead of every other institution that did that. Our document exchange guidelines, cybersecurity, we're really kind of I think the first one to include a mechanism to say something that the arbitrator shall discuss, cybersecurity, mediation. So there's been some really great rewards, as you mentioned earlier, as we've gone through this exchange and rule process. So
your comment about ADR as a phrase that rolls off of our tongues pretty easily here in the United States, being a different concept in the rest of the world. But that raises in my mind the whole question about mediation that you were just referring to. And to what extent do you observe that in the international realm, mediation is becoming a more widely accepted modality of, I'm going to say, dispute resolution?
Yeah, I think so. This gets back to my passion here, and I think you're right. I will tell you that there is a historic recalcitrance to adopt and include mediation for international dispute resolution, and I think this comes from a variety of levels. Part of it goes to what you just said earlier about advocates being familiar and comfortable with the civil rules of procedural or whatever that is. It's a comfort, and so many international advocates are more comfortable with arbitration than they are with mediation. They don't have. It's a different skill set. It's a different process, and so that is part of our hurdle. The communities don't socialize with each other very often either. There are groups of what I would call dual, that are very well versed in international mediation, arbitration, and they'll go to international arbitration conferences. But if we're really being honest here, we're not integrating these two communities wholly. There's a kind of a distinct separation a little bit. And I think the processes don't, exchange. We incorporated this last time in the ICDR rules, another benchmark to show we're going to presume you're going to mediate in this arbitration. It's not, you can opt out, all that's fine, but we want to create and invite a presumption to consider mediation, and that's I think that's helpful. So I think it's growing. There are jurisdictions. And I will. I want to be careful of stereotyping, but I will say common law jurisdictions seem to have, by and large, a little more acceptance to a mediation conciliation process at this point. But there are civil law jurisdictions that have some amazing infrastructures for mediation and advancement and pioneers. And so this is not this or that or all or nothing. It's just a difference in culture a little bit.
Your mention of ICDR just in that last couple of sentences reminded me that at the beginning of this whole session, I just jumped right into the meat of our interview, Steve, and I didn't really even give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about your transition from AAA itself specifically to ICDR, and tell us a little bit about what your responsibilities are with the organization.
Well, that's good. So I just as an overview, this is I guess another part. It's been fun. I've geographically I am responsible for obviously California and most of the U.S. actually. I spend most of my time in where you have some markets. There's Texas and Illinois and California and Washington State and so there's conferences and events and companies all over the U.S. right, so that's a challenge. And so that's Mexico. I probably cumulatively been in Mexico probably almost 2 years of my life, same as Canada. I've been to I think 13 or 14 Mexican states. I've been to 7 Canadian provinces and And so I also help with Asia a little bit. So that's, and people ask me, do you love to travel? I said, airplanes and taxis and airports aren't that fun. I'm going to tell you. But I will tell you, the community and the people and the culture it is absorbing, and it's wonderful. That's that's another reward. Sitting across individuals or discussing things and learning from them, from their perspective, is just that's my reward again as we look at this.
Well, it is one of the real rewards of this international work. It broadens your horizons, makes you recognize just how big the world is and how different cultures work together and how much we have to learn from other people. But I digress. Tell me, what else are you working on at the moment in your current capacities?
Yeah, so things that we just kind of other projects and things going on. We have had just released tribunal secretaries guidelines at the end of last year. That's a project we just wanted to define that a little bit better. We feel there's 3 gaps with that practice of using tribunal secretaries, and one is making sure that the parties have control. 2, we want to make sure there's a definition of what they're doing and what they're not doing, and that there's clarity in compensation and who's paying and what's or not paying or otherwise. So that's one project. Third-party funding also was something that came into our rules that we included in the last sense. AI and all these services are really something we're keeping our eye on. We just released a service called it's connected with an organization called Optima Juris, and they will help, I guess, host with our hosting of all of our virtual hearings. That's just tripled and multiplied for us since the pandemic, and really continues in a lot of ways. One of the things they offer is AI transcription of hearings. So, and it's like 99% accurate. So this is just a portfolio of services now, Chuck, that you can get at a reduced cost with an increased efficiency. It's pretty amazing. A couple other things that we're working on. Technology is a really big part of my effort. We have a survey for the technology world on our website, ICDR.org, that you can go take. And we really want feedback from a greater community on this. And it has to do with, technology, cases, and arbitration and mediation on the international side of things. Entertainment is also somewhere that we really, our caseload, I'll just look at, give you a feel. ICDR, last year we had 755 international cases. 127 of those were expedited, 215 were multi-party. In the scheme of California is in 3rd place right now between New York, behind New York and Miami. We had 75 international cases in California in 2022. That's pretty strong, actually. This is a critical market for us in the international arbitration. Just industries, entertainment, joint venture partnerships, technology, energy, client services, suppliers, some of those areas. So that gives you a little bit of feel on what's going on.
You talked a little bit about New York and Miami, recognized to be significant centers of influence within the international commercial arbitration arena. I wonder if you could share with us any observations you have about what goes on in those jurisdictions that we might benefit from and improve our position here in California.
Yeah, so there's probably multiple layers on that a little bit. I think one of the things that New York has had history on its side, and you can if you've been to New York, you just know that city has an economic and international dynamic that makes people comfortable from anywhere in the world, right? And business, travel, or anything like that. And so New York has had its history for years and years and years. I think it's it continues to try to strengthen that element by organizations that want to have hearing centers or otherwise, or conferences or programs or all those sorts of things. So that's good. I think Miami has also really focused on its connection to Latin America and its nexus there, and I think it's updated laws to make sure that that's seen as a positive there. So those are good things. California has done some great things. We talked about Senate Bill 766 that Eric Tuckman and I sent a letter of support in 2018 to allow foreign attorneys. That's fantastic, right? And so I think there's positive there, and in the GDPR, the market size and the economy in California is absolutely amazing. You can't ignore that. Technology, energy, alternative energy, on and on and on. I think there's if I'm concerned about two things in California, it's one, I need to my friends in Edmonton and Calgary. If you talk hockey between those two cities, there's at least a little I guess contentious, and it's good spirited and so on. But sometimes we're a little split in California, Northern and Southern California, and I think that dynamic is amazing. Look at the cities we have, but that might not always help in terms of, I guess, real cohesion in an effort like this. And so we need to be aware of that. I don't think it's handicapping, but I think it sometimes is something we just need to think about in promotion. The California International Arbitration Week has been, I think, a great effort of success for awareness in California, all those things. The legislative issues, I think, are a little concerning, to be honest. This recent Senate bill, or Assembly Bill 924, we're sending in a letter on this as well with concern, and just the scope of what a written complaint means, and that. So we have to be, if we're honest, people outside of California, because it's stature and economy and such, maybe take other shots if they can, because they want arbitration in their own jurisdictions to succeed. And so we need to be vigilant and aware as a community to promote and to provide all the positives to California, and also where we can is have voices or in support or oppose those that are going to hurt California. So that's kind of, I guess, a few different thoughts. A lot of positive, but we need to be vigilant to protect as well.
Well, Steve, you mentioned Miami, and of course its proximity to Latin and South America, but we have Mexico and Canada in our backyard, and my observation has been that we get along reasonably well in this space with Canadians, but there's an opportunity we seem to be missing particularly with Mexico and perhaps other Latin American countries. Do you have any thoughts about what we might do to capitalize on our proximity?
Yeah, I will agree with you that I think those markets actually have some activity, probably some really healthy activity that is underappreciated, and I think that's exactly right. Mexico and California and Canada are just natural connections, technology, industry-wise, and cultural-wise. There's some fantastic connections. Just we did a day program on March 14th, and I made it a point to include people from Mexico and Canada for that reason, just because of that connection. And we need to increase that sort of interaction and collaboration on those fronts.
Let me shift gears, because AAA has a new rock star as a CEO, and there's been a lot of press about this, but I would welcome you telling us a little bit about the impact having a former Chief Justice from Michigan now running your organization. And Bridget McCormick is highly touted, and I'm sure she's making great strides with you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, it's been actually really exciting to see, just the short time, kind of, the energy and the initiative that she's influenced in our organization, both internally and externally. She is passionate about innovation and generative AI, including, and all those things that come with it. And so there's a lot going on internally. She is on the road a lot. She's also meeting with a lot of our own staff, and so it's been really dynamic to watch her. You look at her position as a Chief Justice in the Michigan Supreme Court, and her transition, and I guess my observation there is she managed all these courts in Michigan, and her ability to look at process and efficiency in judicial management, or dispute resolution, if you will, or the resolution of disputes in courts. The consistency there is right on line, and she's really wedded to and buys on to those sort of principles. So it's been fascinating to watch. I think we'll see a lot of change and innovation from her leadership.
You talked about a number of the key industries that had been generating work with ICDR. I wonder if you could share with us, what are the chief complaints you hear from your principal customers, and what lessons might we take away from that?
Yeah, I think, and this, I guess, complaints or concerns are probably really driven by, it might be process sophistication at times, or understanding. I think advocates, and there are times where there are, let's say, some disconnects, and maybe understanding of process is one a little bit, and that's where I think transparency of the rule really helps a little bit. I think some other concerns is just maybe the not understanding tribunal process or decision making always. It's a dispute, and sometimes people are not at their best during disputes, and so I also think I'm amazed to see, with the pandemic, I've been able to watch more hearings and procedural hearings that I have ever historically, right? And so for me, it's opened a great world of different styles and approaches of advocacy and arbitrator management, and so all those things go into it. I think arbitrators should have and really do have integrity of process. I think one of the things that, going back to California a little bit, people pick on California for our higher disclosure standards, right? The ICDR has a pretty high. I mean, we embrace disclosure. We say disclose, 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 and I think those sorts of process integrities are really important. They give parties comfort as to, okay, who's deciding this, and do I need to know everything about she or he or they that are deciding this case? And so I think those are process protections that I think parties really want to have, and that where there's perceived gaps or misunderstanding is probably where we see some of those concerns.
Well, you mentioned several things that really speak to the integrity of the process during your remarks this morning, but I wonder if you got any particular additional thoughts as to what we can do to enhance the credibility of our awards, the process, giving even the people who end up on the losing end of the stick confidence that they've had a fair shake.
That's a good question, Chuck. I was just in a training, and this is one of the things I told the arbitrators that in our program. It was, the parties need to understand that the arbitrators have read the documents, right? Their submissions. They need to understand the arbitrator needs to. This is a service. it's in a process to resolve disputes, but it's also a service we're providing. And I think sometimes we forget the service part of this a little bit. And if you think about the service element of that, parties want to know that, one, I've been heard. I understand the dynamics of all the positions put forth in the case, that it's managed in a way that's as fair and balanced as you can do. And so I think those are really important. In your award writing, you're doing the same thing there as you are in a hearing management, to communicate an understanding of the arguments, the history of the case, and then analyze why you're deciding that. And some of the arbitrators I heard over the years, and you're really writing that award almost as much for the losing party to understand why they're losing as anything, right? They need to understand, okay, we lost because why, and that, I think good awards get to that. We work pretty hard as an institution reviewing awards to, we don't get into the substance, but we want to see the analysis, right? We want to see the analysis.
A new topic to maybe draw our conversation to a close this morning, Steve. Diversity, inclusion, expanding the breadth and depth of panelists and the like is a critical importance to our chosen profession. And I'd like you to share a little bit of what AAA is doing and your overall observations as to why that is of significance.
Yeah, this has been, I guess, another passion of mine, and it's just something I'm what I call an open door policy type guy. I think doors should be open for people, and I've just intuitively I've watched our community and variety of subsets of that community over the years, and sometimes we do really well. Sometimes we're not really inviting or as inclusive as we need to be. So I've tried over the years to make notable invitations to individuals and professionals at different times to come join a program, to come be at this conference, or to be on this committee, whether it's our California ICDR committee or others, and to be on our panel and otherwise. And so that's some other nuances there that you can't be passive at this. That's a lesson I've learned long ago. In order for us to really have diversity in our listing system and otherwise, I have to go recruit. I have to be in communities, and I can't just recruit in my own community, right? It's not gonna work, I don't think, if I'm honest with that. And so I've got to go and interact with different communities and different individuals and make connections otherwise. So that's a little bit of the thought and feedback. I will say that I think our organizational goals really support this. There's in terms of listing cases and otherwise and appointments, which is really helps. There's I think a change an inclusion that has happened with that by itself. And then just our own efforts one-to-one, right? I think I can think of receptions or activities where people didn't feel included, right? They're sitting by themselves. And I guess my challenge and my invitation to everybody is, don't let anybody go sit by themselves, or be inclusive. And this sometimes might be socially awkward, it might be uncomfortable, but we need to be inclusive in this community. It's too important for the integrity of it. It's too important for the overall diversity of it that we need to be about this. So,
well, Steve Anderson, this has been thoroughly delightful. It's selfishly been an opportunity for me to reconnect with you. It's been far too long since we've had a chance to enjoy this time with each other. But I also want to thank you not only for taking the time to participate in our CalArb California Conversations experience, but also for advancing the cause of bow ties. I must say, you look remarkably natty, and I'm hoping that the next time I see you, you will still have that bow tie around your neck.
In your honor, Chuck. It's Back in our days when we would go to lunch or meet in San Diego, I looked at it with you, and still do, with admiration for not only your bow tie but all your professional achievements and activities. So it's been a treat for me as well.
Well, you're very kind, Steve, and thank you very much for being with us this morning.